How we doing, everybody? It's Wardy here. It's May 25th, 2025, and in our latest Big Mets update segment, we have a lot to get into as the New York Metropolitans just concluded a 5-2 Game 2 victory over a 3-game set. They're in their NLCS rematch, I should say, against the LA Dodgers. So make sure to check out this past night's post-game coverage I have for you guys on not only our stream on YouTube, but also wherever you get your audio podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, you name it. We broke down the ball game, inning 1 through 9, and all the key takeaways. And we're going to further expand on those takeaways, headlined by the true breakout that is Brett the Hitman Baty. What has worked so well for Baty as of late? Is it sustainable? And ultimately, what should us Mets fans expect more of out of Baty going forward, with him completely thriving with Jesse Winker currently out with his oblique injury? We're also going to talk about the one and only Juan Soto finally having a key moment for this Mets team, which now begs the question, will this now start to kickstart something? Will this be something where we look back on and say Juan Soto finally started to get in a groove and this was a game that really kickstarted it? We're going to expand on that, along with what is happening with Frankie Montas. One of the key acquisitions this past offseason by David Stearns for this rotation is yet to toe the rubber for the Mets, but we have the most important news for Montas yet that we're about to get into. And from there, we're going to stay on the topic of guys there, especially that are in the minor leagues, including ones in Ronnie Mauricio. As Ronnie continues to tear the cover off the ball in the minor leagues, how good has his start been for AAA Syracuse, and when could we potentially see him called up by this Mets team? Will it be soon? Will it be long from now? That's what we'll get into. And to wrap up the show, we have some really important discussions to get into in top pitching prospects for the Mets. And Noah McLean, his latest outing from a couple days ago, was there so much to love about him? Will he be the next call for the Mets on the pitching front? And also, Zach Thornton, the very exciting southpaw option there in Double-A. He just had, without question, his best start yet at the minor league level. We're going to expand as to why you should be excited about him as a Mets fan. That, along with everything else happening in the farm from Port St. Lucie all the way up to AAA Syracuse, is what we're about to break down. So thank you guys kindly for smashing that like and subscribe on as you first chime in, and let me know all your initial reactions in the comments down below to today's topics as always. And shout out our amazing sponsors here at SeatGeek that have you covered for all of your ticketing needs. Check them out by clicking the link down below in the description and utilizing our promo code WARDY10. That way you too get 10% off your next ticket purchase for Mets tickets, Knicks ECF tickets, if you really do believe that they have a chance to come back down 2-0 there against the Pacers. Whether it's comedy show tickets, concert show tickets, you name it, SeatGeek has you covered. Make sure to utilize it for 10% off your next ticket purchase. And also shout out our awesome friends here at BetUS that have you covered all of your sports betting needs. But of course, folks, make sure that if you're getting involved here, that you know what you're doing. I do not want anyone to get involved in betting if they're not comfortable with it. Make sure that you're safe and sound with what you're doing, and you guys know how to bet responsibly first and foremost. And should you guys want to dabble, listen, we got Kodai Senga towing the rubber tonight for the series finale against the LA Dodgers at the time of this video first coming out. And Senga right now is at plus 2,000 odds to win the National League Cy Young Award. And mind you, this is the same Kodai Senga that was in Cy Young Award voting in his rookie year there in 2023. Didn't happen in 2024, but that's because Buddy was injured all year long. So I love this play for Senga, who enters this start against the Dodgers. We'll see how he does with just over 1.4 ERA. And folks, BetUS has you covered on the front of all things on the betting front, as you guys can utilize our amazing code YouTube150. That way you two get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, $125 on your second or third, up to $2,000 for whatever you guys want to bet on. Just head over to betus.com.pa today and hammer this play the way that I know I certainly am going to be doing there on this Cy Young front. But without further ado, everybody, let's kickstart this discussion by getting into the man that is finally starting to break out at the MLB level. And listen, it's always great to see a player break out, regardless of how long or how short it takes them. In the case of Brett Baty, entering his age 25 season, and after being called down already by the Mets once, now getting the call up with Jesse Winker's grade 2 oblique injury, he's finally stepping up and looking like a guy that could truly be a mainstay now at the major league level, guys. Brett Baty, what did he do this past night? He just casually went 3 for 3, got on base all 4 times, smoked a double for an RBI at 104 miles per hour, ripped a base knock to begin the ball game to cut the deficit there to 1 run when the Dodgers were initially winning game 2 of this 3-game set. Mets winning by a final score of 5-2, but it was 2-1 at the time, thanks to Brett the Hitman Baty pulling one to the right side, had himself an infield single, got on with a walk, and then finished the ball game there with an opposite field double to drive in a run. That's a pretty darn good day, if you ask me, for Brett Baty at the office, who now has a 258 average and a 799 OPS on the season. So Brett Baty is already looking fantastic, and it's crazy crazy to say this, but Brett Baty has right around the same OPS as a guy like Juan Soto right now. He even has a higher OPS technically than Juan Soto. Who had that on their bingo card heading into the season? Almost in June, Brett Baty has a higher OPS than Juan Soto. Yes, it's really a compliment for Brett Baty, but it's also an insult for Juan. But the good news is that both of them seem to be turning the corner here and in the right direction. But starting with Baty, what's most notable about him? It's clearly, without question, the confidence and the composure. This is the same Brett Baty that looked like he could not handle any major league pitching the first 2.5, 3 weeks of the season before he was ultimately sent down. But there's one thing that was notable about Brett Baty's performance. It was that prior to him being sent down, he was finally starting to pick it up. That final week of play that he had there, going from the Athletic series to eventually then at home, where he had a big bomb off of Zach Wheeler, the same game that the Mets walked it off there, and Starling Marte's broken bat single up the middle. I was in attendance for that game, and I'm also proud to say that I've been in attendance for now 3 games in which Brett Baty has had a home run this season. So I've been in attendance for half of the games, at least that Baty's hit a bomb or close to, because I know one of the games, I think he had 2 home runs, if I'm not mistaken. But Brett Bonds Baty, you could certainly label him, and rightfully so. He has looked absolutely fantastic so far this season. And one thing to certainly make note of in the case of Baty with his production right now is that it does appear that this very well could be sustainable to a degree. If we take at least a look over his past 7 games, and I understand just a week's worth sample size, but Brett Baty is batting .348 in that stretch, including a home run, 6 RBIs, 8 hits, and we saw 2 runs scored. And that's good not just for a .348 batting average, but that's also Brett Baty right now that's looking fantastic on the OPS because of the power implementation. This is a guy in Baty where if you look just over his past 15 or 16 games, that's where all of his home runs are. So if you exclude the first couple weeks of the season for him and just focus really over his past 16 games at the major league level, Brett Baty is tearing the cover off the ball, and he's just oozing with confidence right now. I think that's the biggest standout. And then you add in the fact that he's the best infielder the Mets have defensively, with the exception of Lindor and to a degree Acuna. Like, his defense looks absolutely fantastic and as comfortable as ever at the hot corner. He made some tremendous double play turns this past night for David Pearson, who was stellar in his own right, going 7.2 very strong innings for this Mets team, almost going 8 strong there, allowing just 2 technical earned runs. So Brett Baty, loving what I'm seeing from the Hitman, and Brett, in the case of everyone else in this lineup, it's great to see the boys finally starting to step up with runners in scoring position, as the Mets did conclude their past night's victory 4 for 11. They did leave 10 on base, but 4 for 11 is certainly better than 2 for 14 the night prior, in which sadly I was in attendance for that 13-inning disaster class there at Citi Field. But Brett Baty, I would love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. How are you feeling about him so far this season, and now finally see him getting in a groove, regardless of if he's facing right-handed or left-handed pitching? I think that's a very notable thing to emphasize here. Baty took care of Garrett Crochet there and the dominant reliever for the Red Sox in that game in the series finale like it was not a problem whatsoever. And if Baty can now start to step up more consistently against left-handed pitching, there is truly nothing to justify him not being in this lineup every single day. Whether it's starting at third base every day, getting some reps at second when you want to shift Mark to third, that's perfectly fine too. All I know is that Brett Baty deserves to be in this lineup, and he's finally blossoming and now putting the Mets in a great position, because should he be able to keep this up and be a relatively productive player for the Mets going forward, once Winker does eventually return back to this team, they will have a great problem on their hands to deal with as to what they want to do with their lefty bat options off the bench and certainly in the starting lineup. But Brett Baty, Brett the Hitman, so happy to say that Brett Breakout Baty is finally breaking out for this New York Metropolitan team, guys. And let's now just not talk about Brett Baty, but let's just shed some more light as we did this past night. But we're going to talk about him just a little bit more, because listen, anytime that you have Juan Soto, who's had as underwhelming of a season start that he's had, finally starting to produce, I feel like it's important that we emphasize him a little bit more, especially for people that just kind of want more of the quick recap as to what happened this past night in Mets baseball, because Juan Soto, guys, Juan Soto is finally starting to look like he's getting some luck on his side, and he needs it, because this is the same Juan Soto this past night that, mind you, had the first baseball he smoked 396 feet, 103 miles per hour off the bat, but with a 28-degree launch angle and pulled more, not pulled rather, but more going dead center than to the right side. If he pulled that baseball a little bit more, it would have been a first-inning home run. Instead, it falls just short on the warning track, and then Soto just misses what would have been a grand slam, the second just missed grand slam that hit off the wall for him this past week or so. Prior, I should say, it was actually a catch. This time, it thankfully hits off the wall and drives in a pair. That towering 2-run double there for Juan Soto is what's most notable in this latest game for the Mets. And listen, Soto has not been great. He entered this game over his past 7 games, only batting a $120. Past 10 games, entering this game 2 of a 3-game set, a $140. So he's had a lot of work that he's needed to do, not just on, the mental aspect, but also the comfortability aspect, right? He's still getting acclimated and getting adjusted to being a New York Met, but it's great to see him have this kind of game for the Mets, and you just have to hope and pray that this is a step in the right direction for him and his confidence, because if Juan Soto can finally start to get on a roll, I mean, it's going to be over for the league to a degree, and I really don't say that lightly. I mean, this guy's a $765 million man for a reason. Regardless of how much you think he's overpaid and how much you think he's worth just a fraction of that contract, he got it one way or another for a reason, and the track record should have you confident in his abilities. So to all the fair weather schmuck Mets fans out there that have already written off Juan Soto, that already think that the guy's a bum, you are the same class of fans that completely wrote off Francisco Lindor, when without Lindor, this organization would be nowhere where they are right now, as actually an organization on the up and up, and is going to be pushing for deep playoff runs every single year for the foreseeable future. You're likely the same fans that also give Carlos Beltran hell there and back in his first year with the Mets, just because it wasn't necessarily to the caliber that you were initially hoping. You guys see the trend here. Why don't we start to embrace our players? And again, even with the frustration, and I get it, as someone who attended that 13-inning disaster class there and saw Juan Soto topping over baseballs to first base and just soft ground outs, I'm not happy about it. But when you look at all Soto's peripherals, when you look at his 250 BABIP, when the league average is around 300, you know he's had horrendous luck not on his side right now. And once he starts to get luck, more fortune in his favor, we're going to see a Juan Soto truly start to blossom at the major league level the way that all of our fans, including myself, are excited to see. So now, guys, going from Juan Soto, let's talk about what is happening there with the Mets, specifically on the pitching front for a minute, everybody. So as we head back to the main slide, let's talk what is going on with Frankie Montas, because as we know, if you guys did not know, I'm going to enlighten you right now. Carlos Mendoza announced a day and a half ago or so that Frankie Montas would finally begin his rehab outings, and he did in fact begin his rehab outings. And how did he fare in his first rehab outing, everybody? He was there with High A Brooklyn. He went 1 1/3 innings, and he threw 37 pitches. 20 of them were strikes. We saw him sit on the fastball right around 93 to 94, and he did allow 2 runs on 2 hits. One of them was a broken bat single, then the other was a triple off the wall, and he did also walk 2 guys and had a strikeout. So as shaky as they get for a rehab outing for Frankie Montas, but you don't care about the results, you just care about the health, because Frankie is a guy that's expected to eat a lot of innings for the Mets in the second half of the season. I mean, beginning here in the month of June, obviously, and Montas is a guy that a lot of fans, including myself, are really just curious more than anything as to how he's going to perform, because he had 30 plus starts last year for the Brewers, for the Reds, and then the Brewers. The Mets took care of him fairly well there in the wildcard series, if you guys remember. And Montas, he has solid stuff, and he's a guy that can come in, and I think the Mets really like him and how he pairs with the lab. Listen, the Mets gave this guy $34 million or so for a reason, and they think his upside is greater than Luis Severino, so bring Sevy back on a 1 or a multi-year deal. So whether you guys agree with that notion or not, the Mets have the confidence in him, and I think we've learned long by now that for a Mets pitching staff that's collectively been the best in baseball for the most part all year long, that we should not be ones to quickly doubt David Stearns, Jeremy Hefner, Desi Driscoll, Eric Yeagers, and that entire pitching class of the lab, if you will, because if they have confidence, there's great reason for it. And to anyone that's doubted Frankie Montas, are the same people that thought Griffin Canning would be batting practice heading into the season, are likely the same people that also thought that Clay Holmes would never turn out to be the starter that he's now blossoming to be for the Mets here in 2025. So great news on Frankie Montas. Ignore the results. Just focus on the fact that he's finally healthy and is going to continue to ramp up, and he will return this Mets team, barring drastic changes there early in the month of June, hopefully. So going on from Frankie Montas, everybody, now let's get on to talking more back in the minor leagues, because while we're excited to see Frankie Montas return, there's also one other player that a lot of Mets fans, including myself, are wanting to find out, when is this guy going to return to the Mets and what kind of impact is he going to have? And that obviously is Mr. Ronny Mauricio. And I apologize, click the wrong slide. That was the Mets offensive numbers. Let me see here. I can't point the right way. Let me do that there for you guys from the past night. If you guys want to check it out quick, go right ahead. I'll give you a quick a countdown from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, you got your quick look. You can check it out more in our post-game show this past night. But getting on to Ronny Mauricio, everybody, let's talk about Ronny. And also, just fair warning, the highlights I'm showing you guys are a combination of what Ronny's done so far this year in Syracuse. But the final highlight clip that's combined in this is the actual hit that he had this past night. That was just the only clip we had over the past night of Ronny. And I know you guys get tired of just watching the same 10-second clip over and over. So I'd rather show you guys a collection of highlights that he's had so far in Syracuse. And he's been a human highlight reel, Ronny Mauricio. Mauricio. He took part, played in one of the 2 doubleheader games that Syracuse had this past night, and he went 1 for 3 with an RBI that we saw now is up to a 571 average and roughly 1,700 OPS for Ronnie Mauricio so far this year in Syracuse. Now, mind you, we talked about Ronnie on the platform not long ago because we heard rumblings from Mike Rodriguez, Mike DePortez on X, saying how Ronnie very well could be due for a call-up soon, so don't be surprised if it happened. Then we find out 48 hours ago that Ronnie Mauricio goes on his Instagram to post a photo of him in his Mets uniform saying soon, meaning that he will get the call soon. Now we see that the Mets call up Jared Young, as we know, and they call up Jared Young as that utility fit on the roster in the meantime, and Jared Young is by all means not a terrible option for the Mets, as he's been looking great in Syracuse when he was down there and had over 20 home runs last year between the KBO and the AAA affiliate for the Cardinals. But Young is also a guy that we know is not going to probably max out to be much more than just, a small stint at utility fit barring changes at the major league level. And the Mets gave Jared Young the start this past night in their victory there at DH, batting from the left side. Well, Ronnie Mauricio kind of fits the bill right away as a towering bat from the left side that could be fitted in the DH playing time with Vientos, among others, based on pitching matchups and other things. And Ronnie, again, is tearing the cover off the ball to begin the season. And that single that you guys just seen the highlights, I do believe that is actually the one that he just had this past night, which we love to see. So Mauricio's looked fantastic. And expand more as to what we're getting from Ronnie Mauricio, everybody, take a look at this as well, guys. And I want to give a shout out to Mets Analytics on X. This was a graphic that they created 2 days ago. So this was prior to Ronnie's latest game. But just in this little sample size, very similar to Baseball Savant when you look at the XWOBA, the average exit velocity, and all these other things. Take a look at the percentiles, everybody. Again, very small sample size, but what do you notice? You notice a lot of elite. We're looking at literally one of the best hitters already in AAA this season, which tells you that Ronnie Mauricio probably is not going to be down the minor leagues for too long. And this is also the same Ronnie that played a rock solid 7 or 8 innings at the hot corner this past night, and he looked proficient there. So Ronnie's getting reps at second base, at third base, potentially short as well, all over the left side of the infield for the most part. But to see these early numbers that he's having, look at the amount of 100th percentiles that he's finding himself in early on in the offensive end. So this is really encouraging for Ronnie, and it kind of gives us a glimpse to suggest that when he does get called up, whenever that may be, that the Mets are going to get an absolutely hard-hitting bat from the left side of the plate. And yes, he does bat from both sides. He's a switch hitter. But I do think that barring changes, Ronnie Mauricio may fall in the category of the Cedric Mullins category. If you guys don't know what I mean, Cedric Mullins, famous outfielder for the Baltimore Orioles, that many of you guys know, was pretty much an underwhelming bat for the first number of years in his career. And he finally broke out when he went from being a switch hitter to just dedicating all of his at-bats, I believe, from the left side. Don't quote me on that, but I'm like 99% certain on it. And he had a lot more success for a couple of years after the fact because of that. Ronnie, I'm not at all opposed to him still trying to develop as a switch hitter, but he has far and away been a better lefty bat than he has been batting from the right side. And I'm curious as to if it's so pronounced once he hits the major league level again, that could be something that the Mets kind of tap into more and say to themselves, you know what, let's just keep Ronnie batting from the left side because we think that'll be best for him in his development. It won't shock me if it happens, but what will shock me is if Ronnie Mauricio is up tomorrow. And the reason why I say that is Ronnie Mauricio can't be called up until earliest the 27th of May. Given when Ronnie was first eligible there for Syracuse coming back from his rehab stint, he wouldn't be able to be called up by the Mets any earlier than May 27th, unless a corresponding move is a player being injured and being the corresponding transaction in the process. So Ronnie, we could see up relatively soon. And I kind of like the idea of it happening, considering if Jared Young's up here, what does Jared Young do better than Ronnie Mauricio? Outside of the minor league experience, defensively, he's a more versatile option. Sure, you could argue that, but as long as Ronnie's healthy, I have the utmost confidence in him handling the hot corner if the Mets need him for a game or getting more consistent reps at DH. It's all going to come down to how they profile him as development, but the guy's power is unbelievable, and he really feels like a guy that will translate fairly well at the major league level with the offense. We're going to see some drastic splits there for sure. There's a chance that he may strike out at a very solid rate there. How does he handle the breaking ball at the major league level and today's velocity? But Ronnie Mauricio is a player that a lot of fans are bullish on, and for great reasons. So definitely we're going to continue to keep an eye on him, because it will not be shocking if he's called up within the next week or two, nor will it be shocking if he's not caught up until sometime midsummer. It's all what Carlos Mendoza and David Stearns are most comfortable with doing there, everybody. And staying on the topic of the minor leagues, let's now focus back on the pitching end, because you guys see how Ronnie Mauricio, again, is looking fantastic. Well, let's talk about other guys who have definitely been notable. And let's begin with a guy that very well could be at the major league level relatively soon for this Mets team. And that is going to be Mr. Nolan McLean. Because Nolan McLean in his latest outing, as you guys can see right down here in the highlights that I'll be relaying to each and every one of you, he looked darn good. I mean, really, really good Nolan McLean. And let's talk about Nolan McLean and what stands out so much about him. Because Nolan, in his first start in the year in Syracuse, after dominating with the Rumble Ponies, went 7 shutty. I mean, he was fantastic, right? Then his second outing wasn't as sharp, but not terrible either. Third outing now in Syracuse, he goes 6 innings of 2 hit, 2 walk, 2 total runs, but only 1 total earned run. So only 1 earned run charged to Nolan McLean in this one. 6 Ks, 93 pitches, and a 2 ERA that he did approximately 48 hours ago or so at the time of recording this video. I just didn't come out with a video the following morning because I didn't get a chance to on my schedule, so I want to talk about Nolan now, what I love so much about him. Not only is the velocity encouraging there that he sits, especially mid-90s on the gun there, can touch the upper echelon of the 90s if he needs to, but it is truly that sleeper is a thing of beauty. He has a true starter mix right now that can play up at the major league level, like as we speak. And I really do think that in the case of Mr. Nolan McLean, this is a guy that will be with the New York Mets sooner rather than later. And when I see sooner rather than later, not only do I view him so much more highly than Brandon Sproat and his immediate potential impact at the major league level, and this is not to denounce Sproat at all, but to rather uplift how impressive McLean has been the past calendar year. I mean, Sproat has pretty much right now, at the time of recording this video right now, Sproat has a flat right around 7 ERA in Syracuse since he's been called up there last year. Nolan McLean has a 2 ERA in his first 3 starts. This is already a more impressive 3-game stretch than Sproat has ever done in AAA so far. Since Sproat has hit AAA, he has not found nearly as much consistency as what McLean has done in just a 3-game start sample size. So it's telling that McLean stuff will play at the major league level, and many do believe in the organization that McLean not only could potentially be a summer call-up for this Mets team, but he could really be a weapon for them in their rotation in that 6-man. So with Paul Blackburn having worked his way back, he's basically ready to return with Frankie Montas beginning his rehab outings with Sean Manaea right around the corner to begin his rehab outings too. The Mets are going to have a lot of great and difficult decisions to make, but that's what you want. You want as much pitching depth as possible. You want an abundance of depth, and the Mets certainly have that now in a guy like Nolan McLean, especially balling out the way that he is, everybody. And I'm really curious to see how he's going to continue to perform. So let me know, guys, again, in the comments down below, all your thoughts on Nolan McLean, and if you do believe that he will be the next starter option called up by the Mets. Because as we know, the Mets this past day did, in fact, call up there the southpaw, that being in, I don't know why I'm blanking on his name so bad right now. You know what? It's so bad. You know when you guys just have a complete brain fart so bad that you have to check the notes? So that's what your guy Wardy is going to do real quick here, just to take a look at what was the exact move there, because I know that they brought up the lefty that was with the Mets earlier this year. Brandon Waddell, that's right. I didn't even see it in my notes yet, but it just popped in that. Brandon Waddell went 4 rock-solid innings for the Mets when asked upon to basically be a multi-inning reliever after they had like a guy like Brosman get the first inning or so of the game as a spot start. And Waddell was fantastic with the Mets when he was called up not too long ago. He's back up with the Mets now as a lefty option, a multi-inning relief option in their bullpen. They have, in fact, DFA'd Hansis Cabrera after pitching 2 innings for the Mets in the 13-inning disaster class there at Citi Field. I hope Cabrera clears because I would love to keep him in the organization. Jose Alzcar, same applies, just for the elite base running at minimum and solid defense. They were both DFA'd this past day to make room for that being in not just Brandon Waddell, but also in Jared Young. Again, all expendable players, no doubt about it, but I appreciate the fact that the Mets brought up Waddell because I do think that he is upside at the major league level, but he's not a true starter type in my opinion, the way that Nolan McLean certainly is. So let me know all your thoughts again on McLean, everybody, because staying on the topic of starters, there is one other star that I want to really amplify here before we do our eventual breakdown of just everything that's happened in Port St. Lucie, AAA Syracuse, and the minor leagues this past night of minor league baseball. But let's now talk about a guy that has really impressed so far, and that is Mr. Zach Thornton, everybody. You're going to hear his name a lot more on the platform going forward. Zach Thornton, guys, he was unbelievable this past night, guys. He literally had a perfect game going, and the only reason why he didn't pitch the whole game is because they have him naturally on an innings limit there, pitch limit of around 87 pitches they had him. But Zach Thornton, who hasn't been with the, they're at his level right now too long with the Roma ponies because he started the year in Brooklyn, but he skyrocketed there in Brooklyn. It did not take him long to get to the Roma pony level. And Zach Thornton, who truly looks like a homegrown southpaw starting option, which gets me really giddy because the Mets really don't have many of those. Outside of David Pearson, the Mets haven't had a homegrown lefty option that could be solid at the major league level since Steven Matz. It's been Matz, Peterson, and really nothing in between that the memory is first telling me. But Zach Thornton, guys, goes 6.1 perfect innings, 6 strikeouts, 87 pitches, a sub-3 ERA so far there. But total ERA in the minor leagues this season, he's at, I think, a 1.74 or so. So he has more work to do that we're going to see at the Roma pony level, but as impressive as one can be. And don't be bothered by the graphic looking a little weird with his shoulder. But it was a photo of him reaching out and holding a baseball, but it was going to cover way too much of the highlights and stuff. So I kind of just cut it off and gave his arm, a little cut there, but that's fine. Zach Thornton, everybody, remember the name. This is definitely a prospect that we're going to be talking about more of when we do our prospect breakdowns like this throughout the course of the season, because the 23-year-old 6'3", 170-pounder was drafted by the Mets back in the 5th round in 2023 out of Winona, Minnesota, and definitely an encouraging and exciting southpaw option now the Mets have added to the mix among many others, everybody. And that's what you guys will see this, not the highlights, but rather we're just double checking his stats there through what we see on MILB.com. So now, guys, we talk about Zach Thornton, we talk about everyone else there that's notable, I think, on the pitching front right now. So let's wrap up the show by talking about the minor leagues in its entirety. Let's get into there from Port St. Lucie all the way up to AAA Syracuse before we wrap up today's segment. And let's begin there in Port St. Lucie because they won in 5 innings, 8-0 against the Hammerheads this past night. And we saw offensively standouts in Mr. Trey Snyder there at shortstop, going 1 for 3 with a run scored, batting .252 with a 743 OPS. No Colin Houck in this ballgame. I would like to make note of that. Former first-round pick 2 years ago, did not get any reps in this one. Davison Gutierrez, who I like a lot as a Venezuelan catching prospect, not named Francisco Alvarez, there at catcher, 1 for 3 with a pair of RBIs that we saw for Davison. Batting .212, has more work to do, was red hot the first couple weeks and then fell off a cliff, so he's working his way back. Simone Juan, IFA signing, big IFA signing by the Mets 2.5 years ago or so. 1 for 3 with a run scored and an RBI, .224 average, 633 OPS. And Murata, their pitching, goes 4.2 shutty with his 4 ERA and a pair of strikeouts. Now let's get on to the Brooklyn Cyclones. The Cyclones lost this past night 10-8 to the Blue Claws, and the notables on the Cyclones have most certainly been Carson Benj, who ripped his 11th double of the season. Benj with another RBI is now up to a .312 average, a .971 OPS on the season. He was batting DH, but he's been playing all over the outfield so far, and he has 4 home runs and 26 RBIs and 7 stolen bags. Not a matter of if, but when Benj does in fact get moved up to the Roma ponies. He's been fantastic this year as the Mets first round pick a year ago. And what I love so much about him is that I don't think he's at all far from being major league caliber. I think we could see Benj potentially in major leagues at some point within the next calendar year or so. He definitely plays up, looked fantastic when he was at OSU. And speaking of OSU, he was teammates with Nolan McLean. So these are 2 guys that we could see blossom, OSU kids at the major league level potentially at some point within the next calendar year or so. So exciting stuff there for Benj. Ewing at center field looked fantastic. 1 for 4 game with a run scored for him. .354 average and .930 OPS, picking up right where he left off as he was actually called up this year that we saw from the Port St. Lucie Mets, where he was doing exactly this. So he has stayed the same. Jesus Baez had another big game. Guys, Jesus Baez went 6 for 8 2 days ago in the Brooklyn Cyclones doubleheader. He is one of the hardest hitting batters in all of the minor leagues for the Mets, and he is finally picking it up. This is massive to see Baez doing what he's doing right now. 2 for 4 game with this one, 2 runs scored, up to a .276 average and 801 OPS. Baez is coming out of nowhere right now. It's masterful for this Mets team. You got to love to see it. This is a kid that I firmly do believe can blossom to something greatly at the major league level, but he was very underwhelming the first number of weeks so far in the minor leagues. But when you look at him, he's just so, again, just everything about him so stocky, so towering. Even for 5'10", he's roughly 200 pounds there as a 20-year-old, and he has just so much power, some of the biggest power in all the Mets minor leagues. Jesus Baez is finally starting to heat up, everybody. Keep an eye on the name because he's not going anywhere. Baez, notable in this matchup. Suero at catcher, which I like a lot. If you guys don't know Mr. Suero, he is a Bronx native there playing in High A Brooklyn right now. And Suero can play catcher, he can play corner outfield, he can play first base, he can play all over the place. But a predominant catcher, 2 for 4 game for him that we saw for Swear on this matchup with a pair of RBIs, 237 average, but 858 OPS. Mercado at first base looked good, 1 for 3 with 3 RBIs, thanks to his second home run of the year. Mercado now batting 342 with a 933 OPS. Love to see that. And on the pitching end, we saw Frankie Montas have his outing. And then sadly, my guy here in Hall, who's been otherwise fantastic, Noah Hall, has looked great so far this year, but he just got absolutely rocked big time. He gave up 6 earned runs in 4.1 innings, but still has a 2.86 ERA because he's been literally that good up until this point. Unfortunate, but is what it is. Ramon Gomez, who topped out not 104.5 on the gun, hardest throw in all the minor leagues for the Mets that they have here right now in High A, Brooklyn. He just got moved up a couple weeks ago from St. Lucie. Gave up another earned run. He's at a roughly 17-year reign, a very small sample size. Has more work to do. We know that flamethrower, he just needs to control it and get that command going. And speaking of command, the Rumble Ponies were in command of what was a tight 3-2 victory this past night there. That we saw in Double-A. And for the Rumble Ponies, the notables on the offensive end were not much. They did not have a lot going. Ryan Clifford won 1 for 4 in this one. Nick Morabito went over. Jet Williams went over. Surprisingly, no one really hit a lick in this one for the most part. And pitching-wise, Thornton was a stud. Anthony Nunez, who's moved up not long ago there that we saw from the Brooklyn Cyclone level, he did give up 2 earned runs, so he's at a sub-6 ERA and a very small sample size in the minor leagues right now for the Rumble Ponies. But again, more work to do. And then the Syracuse Mets, last but not least, they won 14-3 and won other 2 doubleheader games against the Red Wings. And the 14-3 victory had a lot of offense. John Singleton hit a towering 10th home run this season. Joey Meneses hit his 3rd. Celestino hit his 6th double of the year. We saw De Los Santos hit his 8th. Donovan Walton hit his 6th. And Joey Meneses hit 2 doubles, now up to 20 on the season. Luke Ritter hit his 5th. Joey Meneses, extra base god right now, with his 271 average, 799 OPS with an RBI in this matchup. Drew Gilbert, one of the only guys that didn't get in on the offense, which is unfortunate. 0 for 5 in this one, 221 average, 676 OPS. And Luke Ritter had 3 RBIs on this one, which was nice. De Los Santos, same exact thing. And on the pitching end, Austin Warren went 2 shutty there in a bullpen game. Dominic Hamill went 3 shutty. So I'm liking Hamill thriving now more that reliever setting, because I don't see him blossoming at the major league level right now as a starter, but as a reliever, I think that's definitely a lot more realistic. Anthony Ghost sadly gave up 3 runs, but only 1 earned run for the veteran southpaw, 4 ERA. And then we saw Daniel Nunez go 1 scoreless inning, allowed a hit and a strikeout, sub 3 ERA now for Daniel Nunez there at the AAA level. That's notable because Nunez will be back up with the Mets, just a matter of when, not if. They did drop their other game 7-4 in the doubleheader. Drew Gilbert did have an RBI, but still went over. Celestino went 1 for 4 with a run scored, and Hayden Senger ripped his 2nd home run of the year. Shout out Hayden Senger. We love him. Can't thank him enough for the help that he gave the Mets earlier this season. Blade Tidwell went 6.2 innings of 3 earned run, 1 walk, 2 strikeout baseball, just over a 4 ERA on the year. And Colin Poche allowed 4 unearned runs, 0 earned runs, 2 walks and 3 strikeouts for Poche, 5.4 ERA, a guy that we could see at the major league level sooner than later if he gets his command right with the slider mainly. This Poche's been a rock solid left field reliever past couple years at the major league level, but was batting practice, couldn't get the command going with the slider, especially for the Nationals, his handful of games this year. Then he gets ultimately picked up by the Mets as another lefty option for them to consider. But folks, that is going to do it for the latest on the Farm Report and everything there happening in Mets baseball. I want to thank you all so much for watching our latest Big Mets Update segment. I hope you enjoyed, from Baty to Soto to Montas, Mauricio, McLean, Thornton, everything else in Mets land. Let me know all your key takeaways in the comments down below, and be on the lookout for a live show either very, very, very late tonight there for post-game coverage, as I'll be out of town, so it won't be immediately after the game should it happen, or you guys will get a recap reaction from me while I'm out of town, and then posting a further breakdown in the AM the following day as part of our latest Big Mets Update segment. So either way, guys, you'll get more content from me, just a matter of when. Until then, have a fantastic rest of your night, day, evening, wherever you're watching this. This is your guy, Wardy, signing out. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace out, folks.